Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Adobe Lunch and Learn Connect, Manage, Publish. Make your CCMS a content hub by fetching information from external systems with our host, Leroy Steinbacher, who is our Senior Solutions Consultant here at Adobe. And now I'd like to hand this session over to our host, Leroy. The stage is now yours.
All right, thanks, Emily. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Again, my name is Leroy Steinbacher. I'm Solutions Consultant for AEM Guides. My background is actually in technical communication, so I'm really excited to talk about our topic for the day, external database connections. My experience, I know firsthand about what it takes to pull in content from external databases and put them into technical documentations, and then also some of the pain points it entails when you try to keep that content up to date. So I'm looking forward to our discussion and this new functionality that we'll find within AEM Guides. I'd like to introduce our main speaker for the day, Dilip Krishna. He's the Group Product Manager for AEM Guides. And then we also have two special expert speakers that will be joining us as well. We have Marco Echikaro from BlackBerry, and then also joining us is Ron Egley from Ariel Corporation. So looking forward to this discussion. If you have any questions, please just add them to the chat. We'll have some time afterwards to go over them. And then currently I'll hand it over now to Dilip.
Thanks, Emily and Leroy for a great introduction and also getting us started. As Leroy mentioned, I'm Dilip K. I'm a few months into the company and looking into this wonderful product, which is serving the needs of all these technical document writers and documentation specialists. Really an interesting space to be in. Let me quickly get to the agenda slide, what we're trying to do. We have a packed almost an hour of agenda here. I'll sort of divide that into two big chunks there. One is we'll try and run through some of the slides and the architecture and what we're trying to do in the use cases, and we'll actually hit the road on this one because we will try and do some cool looking demos in terms of how the integration is going to be worked out. So that's what I think we have for the next almost an hour, maybe less than an hour. We'll spend some time on the questions if there are any. So I'll leave that time as well. And then in this entire thing, I think the questions can be on the chat as well. We'll try and answer it, if not now, probably towards the end of it, or we'll get back to you with some of the answers in case we don't have answers to all of them. So with that, let me, I'll probably, I don't want to really read this slide, but fundamentally, I think we want to quickly look at what the business problem is, which is what I think is going to be the next slide for me as well. And then we'll look at some of the use cases. And this is something which actually came as a conversation and also as a great ask from our customers over the last many years, and I think more amplified in the last year or so, where the external source became a very critical element for us to go and integrate and combine with. And so you look at some of the personas and what we're going to talk about, the challenges which we have, and then we have two wonderful guest speakers. I think Leroy introduced them, where Marco and Ron, who are going to be talking about BlackBerry and Ariel, how they are right now partnering with us, but also fundamentally going through this exercise where doing a sort of a co-dev in that sense, and we're going to be deploying some of these into their environment and see how it's really working. And then we have a few more of these beta customers we're working with. Fundamentally, we'll have all of that coming through in sometime in May, June timeframe as we release the product into the market. And then as I said, I'll get into a demo with respect to some of these two use cases and probably a bit of a detail in terms of what we are trying to do, some sort of a hands-on approach in this case. And then, as I said, there'll be a quick, maybe a 10-minute Q&A if you have time, maybe lesser or more depending on how we line up with respect to the speakers and myself. So let me give you a quick sort of a problem statement, and why do we really need this fundamentally? And I just need to spend about a few minutes here. Um, if you really look at the life of an author, it's one of the most challenging, I would say, personas and sort of the role which he or she plays today in some of these large corporations, especially the tech talk community, because while he's sort of grappling with quite a bit of the content itself, which I think is overwhelming. He's also grappling with a lot of data where it is actually getting pulled from. So think of probably some of the high tech industry sort of living almost daily on Jira or on ADO, which is the Microsoft equivalent of Jira. Some of the manufacturing teams really work with the PIM, PLM, where they're actually pulling data, the product data or the equivalent data for authoring some of the guides content. And some of the other companies I know are some of them, which I think, including Ron, who's going to talk about in terms of what his story is. So he's pulling a lot of data from his own homegrown system, which is built on SQL Server, and how that's really getting changed hands between the two, marketing and the tech talk community. And then there are a lot more other systems, and the list is endless. And that's the reason we said it's actually an external data source integration and not just a few, which we initially thought would be the case. And what's the current state, which I think is very important for us to know. So current state is probably they are rewriting or retyping quite a bit of content, which I think is a huge amount of overhead on their part, or they are probably cut pasting or copy pasting, as we call it. I think that's a fair point, which I think is good to have, but I think it's not the optimal way. And then we know from our customers that a lot of them are actually using email communication between where somebody attaches a PDF or attaches the content, and then actually it goes to a different audience, and then the author actually publishes that or pushes that into authoring and then publishes that. So there's that email chain which actually goes in there. And then the last but not the least, there's also a lot of companies which look at cloud storage, where you push a lot of these genuine content which needs to be authored into a cloud storage like a OneDrive or a SharePoint or Google Drive, where people pick it up from there and start to author. So net we found that there is a huge amount of back and forth which happens, especially when you're really authoring the content. So what we're wanting to solve is sort of our vision or the mission statement, which we want to really put in there, is to solve for all the manual typing, copy pasting, editing of data, which is coming from external sources. So where we are trying to pull in data from these external sources, ensuring that there is no manual typing or copy pasting of editing of data. And more importantly, which I think is very critical also, is the fact that we maintain a single source of truth, which means that I'm not really worried about what is happening to the source, which means that any change to the source is sort of reflected on a periodic basis or or an event basis. Fundamentally, that's keeping the data in sync is something which I'm going to be focusing on as well when I get to the Jira, at least the case study. So this is sort of the problem statement. I'm sure I mean, in a normal audience, I would have probably seen the eyes and resonated with the kind of nods which I would have had. But I'm sure it's probably the case in your organization as well, because we have seen that as part of our secondary research or primary research as well, where almost every company said, "Hey, we wanted a solution as of yesterday." Some said we want it today, and some are probably in the discovery phase of wanting to have it, but just not having the wherewithal to get through it. So that's one of the reasons we thought we will probably do it, because we are probably the content hub in which the entire the curry is being cooked. So we thought it's probably the place where we want to get this going. Just a quick, I know it's a heavy slide, but fundamentally, I think there are a few points which I want us to focus on. The external data source could be any, and in this case, it could be, right now we're working in the first build, the release version, which is going to come soon. We're going to be looking at Jira and SQL Server as some of the key solutions we are going to be connecting to. And some of the PIMs we are working on to see if we can get access to some of those to get that PIM data also in some of our systems. And we're also calling out any other data source. So it could be PostgreSQL, it could be SAP, it could be any of the other typical systems, which the source system which typically people work on. And then we worked out an integration layer where we pull the data using an API and mapping those into a mapping template, which means that raw data pulled from a particular API data is actually getting mapped into a mapping template, which actually is holding that data. And in this current solution, we will probably end up giving we'll be giving about 3 out of the box templates, which means something like a list view or a table view or a combination of both. And you would also have the option to go and build your own templates if you want, because if you feel that data is going to be overwhelming and different than the out of the box, you can actually go and do that, which is the provision which you're going to make as well. And that gets sort of divided into 3 core elements of reusability or generated content from a reusability perspective. They go in as data topics, which I think some of you are familiar, or most of you may be familiar with, or a combination of map plus data topics, which I think is going to be the way we're going to put the content together. And last but not the least, what we call as content chunks. And I think you'll probably see that example of it when I really go through the Jira exercise, where I'm actually going to use content chunk as part of the exercise to where I'm not going to save a lot of content, but actually just push the data into authoring. And then this helps the author to kind of use the reusable content and actually sort of play with it and do whatever he wants to do or she wants to do, and then eventually do what they are supposed to do, either publish it into a PDF or an HTML or even AEM site. So those goodness of guides sort of continue. So that's not changing there. So this is a quick lay of the land in terms of what we're trying to build. So it doesn't really matter on the left-hand side of the external source. Give us any external source, we'll be able to try and, as long as we are authenticating in the right manner, it could be a basic authentication, it could be OAuth, it could be bearer-based authentication. So any of these authentication methods we can look at and help you. So we'll help the first part, which is this here, and then and help you build or use some of the out-of-the-box connectors, or you build your own connector, or you build your own templates to pull the data the way you want it. So that's sort of a quick high-level architecture we're going to be looking at. So once you understand
that's
this,
great, Philip. If I just want to add something to your problem statement, because I mean that is a very common situation when, as a technical writer, you're copying and pasting content from another source. And the problem with copy and pasting, every time you copy and paste, you have the opportunity to introduce an error, an unintentional error. Tech writers are always very detail oriented, but it happens. And then the other thing with copying and pasting, especially if you're pulling it from a dynamic source, then as soon as you paste that content into your document, it's pretty much going to be outdated, whether it's outdated the next day or soon. So having the ability to reuse this content, as you're describing in this architecture slide, is just fantastic, because we all know that the power of data is the ability to reuse content from one single source. And when you update that source, all of your documents that use it get updated. So this is really just an extension of this, but now you're including not just content within your data repository, but content from external databases as well. So I think that's fantastic, and it really addresses a problem that we've been seeing in the industry for quite some time. Sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to add those points before you moved on.
No, absolutely. It helps, and actually, and in fact, and as Leroy said, the data topics which you see and the content which you really generate actually are sort of something which he talked about, the stale part, because any customer we spoke to, at least the initial research, almost everyone sort of in unison said that, hey, the content gets sort of stale, and we're always constantly chasing either data or people. So I think this is probably going to address both of them together in one shot. So with that, what I intend to do is really go through, and as I said, I had 2 big use cases which we will go through. One is about the Jira integration, and the second one is what I'm calling a SQL integration, but fundamentally any third-party system which is built on SQL or any database similar to SQL, where in this case I'm going to talk about one of the cases where a car manufacturing company, how they're going to actually build the user manual, or the manual which typically is given to every car owner, and also a very interesting interesting use case of car bulletins, which can run into about 3,000 bulletins, which are actually generated by a car company. So I'll just not steal the thunder, and I'll quickly go through each of them. So a quick show of I'm sure it's a point which I think is an interesting case here. The Rachel is just an archetype, but fundamentally there are Rachels in every high tech industry. Probably now with software becoming a very critical element where you're releasing a lot of products to the outside world. A similar exercise of Jira/ADO equivalent is really existing in almost every company, and they end up doing these release notes on a periodic basis. So somebody like a Rachel actually helps build this technical content, and she does it probably every month for a company like Adobe for some of the products, including guides. We do a monthly release. There are on-prem releases which happens. Some companies do it in every trimester. Some companies do it every quarter. Some companies do it every 6 months. Some of course do a long-term release of a year or so. But irrespective of that, the release becomes a very critical part, and the documentation of that becomes a very critical part. And the entire data actually sits or resides in Jira, which I think, or the ADO, which is a single source of truth. So you don't have to really move around as long as you're actually pivoting your focus on there. And you effectively look at two big content types there. One is the list of bugs and the features which are getting released. So fundamentally, as long as we're able to capture that and bring that in on a periodic basis or on an event basis, that's probably the key which you're going to solve for. So the core problem which I think the Rachels of the world really face is, one, a laborious process. There's going to be a huge manual sync, and which Leroy also talked about from a data getting stale perspective, and particularly in this case because imagine a company doing about 20 releases in a month, 20 features in a month, for example, and the engineers are working on probably 40, and then you really decide with the product that only 15 of them or 20 of them go in. Which one go in is a very dynamic list, which actually changes almost till the last day in certain cases. So that is a very critical component of data getting out of sync, and you really playing cat and mouse. That is going to be a big issue, which eventually results in what we call as the TAT issue, which is the turnaround time, or a delayed turnaround time in some of these release notes documentation, which eventually impacts the product and the brand and so on and so forth. When we did this exercise, and I think it was a very aha moment for all of us, and I think we'll have Marco talk about his experience or the experience he's going to get through when we really deploy there in BlackBerry. But fundamentally, I think what we have done is we have made a very nice seamless template which is going to pull data from Jira, one that is going to be a reusable component which you're going to be looking at, and that published output which you see is we can actually publish it directly to our website. So, and we can also do an automated publishing by way of an API, but some companies don't want to do that. They want to still have a manual publishing, which we will sort of live by. But fundamentally, we have the ability to do an automated publishing, which means on the say the 7th of the day when the release happens, automatically that data gets published into your AEM site or website or any of the other sites which you're going to be looking at, or it could be a PDF publishing as well in case. So I'll just probably share a published output. Typically, what we look at. So this is one of the outputs which we have used using this particular connector. So this is the this directly coming from Jira. So what you see is, and I'm going to do a demo in a while, but fundamentally this is something which you are getting from Jira directly, and this is the same with the fixed issues. So this helps. From a Rachel's point of view, I think her life is sorted with respect to quite a bit of content is not reproduced or redone, but it's actually getting reused largely from Jira directly. The second case, which I think I'll quickly talk about, is the SQL integration or the integration with PLM in this particular case as well. So Max here is a technical writer in a car manufacturing company, and he uses this for he and his team. Actually, it's not just him, but fundamentally uses this for user manual maintenance, repair manual, and of course, I'm going to talk about a very interesting use case of bulletin management as well. he ends up producing, tons of content out of this, which I think is sort of a no-brainer given you're a multi-country car manufacturer, and then it helps him having data sort of dispersed in all over the place. I mean, it could be a warranty management system, there could be a SAP which has some of the car details and the inventory details. You have PIM and PLM or things like that, or the AutoCADs, which has the entire car architecture diagrams and the engineering drawings there. And there are other systems which sort of come and integrate there. So I mean, car manufacturing / any manufacturing is a sort of a interesting, I would say, a landscape for us from a technology perspective, where data comes from all over the place, but fundamentally all gets converged into guides for you to go and document it for a particular use case there. So it's going to be a very interesting case when we solved it, and I'll probably show that to you. But the conceptually we did the same, where we pulled the data, we got that into a multi-templated user database, and I'm going to show that it's going to be a multi-topic for each cars we really going to be looking at. We pulled the data and called them into chunks or topics, and all of them really produced eventually the user manual with which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But fundamentally, that helped us really pull those contents from various places, make it reusable, and actually use it when we are producing the manual, publish the manual, and also put them into a site. And in the second use case of the same, which from a car manufacturing, and I think this is a great use case. And I said on an average about 3,000 technical service bulletins get issued, and these are sort of a very there's a cry which happens from almost all tech writers to say that, hey, can we automate this, because can we have this, because there are tons of data getting pulled from multiple places for a probably a 1-pager or a 2-pager, which really goes for some of these. And this is a quick template which I thought I'll probably show you in terms of how a technical bulletin, the technical service bulletin looks like. So some data is getting pulled from PIM in this case. Again, this is another data on the PIM, which is coming on the affected the vehicle stuff. You have some data from parts inventory management system on the replacement of parts, and there is some data on warranty which is coming from SAP. So this is sort of a real use case, and what you're seeing is actually a real a technical bulletin which I'm showing, and which is something which we are trying to solve for as we go along with some of our customers in the beta phase as well. Before I head to the demo, I'll quickly show you the kind of content which you can think, and this is for the people on the call. This is just to jog your memory in terms of what kind of content really can go in. For example, there could be technical manuals, release notes, especially if it is a high-tech industry. There could be product documentation, knowledge articles. These are some of the type of content you can start thinking. And if you have the same story of having multiple databases, which is sort of fitting into this kind of a content, you can actually start to kind of put your thoughts on and jot them down and probably eventually talk to us as well. And from a second use case perspective, especially the manufacturing, the content which is heavy industries or even automobiles, these are some of the types of reusable content which we look at when we can actually go and integrate it with an external database. And this list is sort of not an exhaustive list, but something which we can probably keep expanding. And while some of it is not existing today, but I feel that there's going to be a huge amount of ask as we go along into this journey of ours. Probably a year from now, when we do a similar lunch and learn session, where we're going to probably talk about success of what we have done in the last year. So that's going to be a huge learning which probably come with, and this list is just going to sort of increase and expand. So with that, let me quickly hit to the live demo, and I'll probably be. I know we have a couple of guest speakers. Let me quickly, and most of you know this interface, those who have used guides, but those who have not, this is guides for you. I'm going to quickly. Let me start with the Jira one. I think that's something which I was just talking about. So this is the Jira use case which I was talking about, where and I'll try and not to produce something or make it run as is, because it may take a lot of time. So I have already done a bit of data publishing. So you will probably, I'll try and show that to you, the published content out of this. But effectively, this can be published to any site or PDF. So I'll not do the publishing as we speak, but just to avoid the both the traffic management as well as the time. But I'll try and show that data to you. So let's look at the Jira one. So which means that I, as Rachel in that case, or any equivalent of Rachel in our organization, fundamentally comes and says, hey, I want to release notes for April, which is going to happen, or just the one which is for March, for probably which has happened. And he or she starts to type a few data points, which is what is listed here. And then I say, hey, I want to pull all the data from my Jira on the new feature and enhancements which is going to come in. So what I can do is I can go to my Jira story here, and I can say, hey, bring me all the story details, and I say insert content. When I insert the content, so this data is getting actually pulled directly from Jira for me, including the numbering, which is dynamic. For example, today we have a list of 65 features going in, and this list is dynamic in nature. What you see is the dynamic data getting pulled, and this is the template which I spoke of. So this is the template which we are giving out of the box. You will so you can actually build your own templates, but fundamentally we felt that this is good enough for us to go and live by. So this is an out of the box template which you are having ticket ID in the summary, which you can look at, and this is how we published it in the PDF which I showed you. But fundamentally, you can, if you publish it with multiple more columns or descriptions, you can actually go ahead and do that as well as part of the XML templates which I was talking about. And now I'll probably show you the power of what we can actually do. So let me. If I go to this particular Jira ID, and this is what I was talking about, and Leroy also mentioned about the this entire data being dynamic in nature, and also it gets stale as we sort of get this entire piece going. So I'm going to make it. I'll probably call it as demo lunch learn, and I'll save this. And I save this. I'll come back to guides. So this is got saved, hopefully. The demo code is always, yeah, that's done. So now I've changed some data in the source. So what I'm going to do is I'll come and this is POC. So mind you, the UI may be a bit clunky, but I think we're getting some of the best designers to do a great job on what we're trying to do right now. So I'm going to come here and actually make the Jira release summary. I'm just going and update, but fundamentally this can auto update itself on an event. For example, if I'm doing a topic pull, or I'm doing a map publish, it can do basis any of that. So I'm doing a refresh right now as we speak, and once I have done, I'll do a quick refresh of this. So this is going to load with the new data with. So if you see the new content, actually it was a good blessing in disguise. It also updated the topic and the sections in the topic here, and also it updated the core content. So if you see the demo L_L, which I put in, is actually got updated into this document. So this is a live case where my source content gets updated, and that gets updated here as well. We had one more user case, which and I can do an entire topic being pulled as well. So I'll probably do that as part of that, just to give you a glimpse of what these two can come in. So list of features also is available, and then there are these bugs or the fixed issues which is also getting listed, and this is the dynamic data which is getting pulled. And if you have more sections from Jira which you want to go and use, and I think Marco will talk about in a minute, but fundamentally we can actually build that in. And more importantly, an interesting use case was one of the customers said, hey, we don't really want to do this way in this way, but we want to have a way by which my PM tells me that on so and so date, this is the Jira query, go and publish this, and that's sort of the brief which is given to him. So we don't want to use this where I want to save something like this and make it a reusable component. Can you give us a sort of a quick insert kind of a thing? So we made a very interesting a point here to get into a use case where you can actually do some sort of a quick insert. So you can actually come in here. As the PM said, I can actually insert the query, assuming that the query stays. I don't think so. Assuming that there's a Jira query here, I can actually go and hit the insert, and that Jira query gets embedded the same way as I embedded the entire piece here. So two sort of workflows, if I may be to use. One is via this method, which is the classical method, and then the second is this method of a quick insert. And this quick insert would ideally work in Jira, but it also may work in the SQL and other examples. But this is a live ask which came from one of our customers, and this is what we called it as content chunks. So you can actually have these content chunks coming in from Jira or any of these sources where we can actually plug and pull in. And this is, as I said, this is any source updation which happens. It's also getting reflected in the publication. And I actually published it as well for you all, so that you can actually see. Yeah, I did two things for you. I published this into like any website I would do, in our case Experience League. So I've actually published this into AEM Sites, which is one of the publishing engines, and I've also done the publishing in I think I did that here, Jira Release Summary. I also published a PDF of what I just said. So I'm not doing that for the sake of time, but fundamentally I'm actually doing that in both the formats, both PDF publishing as well as the sites publishing. So with that, this is a very simple yet a very powerful use case, which sort of finds its way into almost all the high-tech industry. And to talk about it a little more, I'm going to invite Marco to talk about his experience of that, and I'll quickly run the slides for him. So Marco, over to you, and how you benefited from the integration we are working together, and how do you want to quickly help the audience understand what we're trying to do here. And I know most of you know Marco as he was introduced by Leroy in the beginning. So, but you can just quickly go on.
All right, thanks, Philip. Much appreciated. So my name is Marco Cecchicaro. I'm the manager of a tech docs team here at BlackBerry. Yes, it is that company, BlackBerry, that you are all familiar with from many years ago as a device company. We are no longer a devices company. We're primarily a cybersecurity, EMM, and IoT company, but with our hands in a lot of different aspects of cybersecurity and security software. So specifically what I'll talk to you about today is a pilot project that we have going on with Dilip and team right now. And we have a great deal of interest in using this Jira integration feature to improve how we produce release notes about our cybersecurity and EMM products. So right now, the source of information that we use to write our known issues and our fixed issues and the release notes that we release almost on a weekly basis is all manually done through writers, getting a query given to us by our project team and digging into Jira tickets, understanding known and fixed issues, and then producing the write-ups and putting them in data reference topics within AEM guides and putting it through the usual Q&A process, which typically involves generating a final PDF, sending it to our tech reviewers via email, collecting feedback, and so on and so forth. So again, that's all a manual process. It works very well. But when Adobe came to me and explained to me this new Jira integration feature, it kind of put a light bulb on in my head in terms of the potential here, where we can basically integrate Jira a whole lot more into that overall process of creating release notes. So the whole idea here and what we're going to pilot with Adobe is basically within the dev team's Jira tickets that explain the known issues that they want to be included and documented for the public. Within those tickets, we'll add a new release notes comment field, and then the technical writer using the information in the Jira ticket will be able to produce the write-up for that known or fixed issue directly within the Jira ticket. They can then conduct tech review directly in the ticket as well via comments that are being added to that ticket, and then refine that write-up until the project team is happy with that description. And then using this Jira connector from AEM Guides, you can just construct a query that will reach out into Jira, pull on these tickets that have these release notes, comments, write-ups, and then, as Dilip showed, essentially just take the text and format it into a nice, clean, organized table for you within the data topic, and then you can pass it through the typical process of publishing it to the site, once tech review is complete. And then when we need to modify the release notes write-ups, for example, if a fixed issue occurs or a known issue then becomes a fixed issue, the writer can simply still work within the JIRA ticket, and within that field, they can go ahead and change the write-up to describe the fix, and then kick off another, initiate another poll from within AEM Guides to update all of that content.
Thanks, Marco. In fact, it'll be nice to understand some of the implication from the time saving and the cost saving, and also probably the effort saving, which you will probably do when we do a lunch and learn, hopefully next year with the same feature with more connectors and stuff like that. So we'll probably invite you or re-invite you there. So thanks.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, great. So quickly moving on, I know a quick time check for me. Let me go to the next part, which is a very interesting one, because which is a very interesting area, at least from a manufacturing perspective. There are two big areas which I'm going to quickly talk about. Both of them are very big, but I think what I'm going to quickly talk through is I'll probably run through the manual first, and then the bulletin second. So let me open the owner manual, which is I think most of you know what an owner manual is, given most of us own a car. But fundamentally, the owner manual is a piece of document which is created by the tech writers, and also the repair manuals is also done by the tech writers. But fundamentally, the writers in this space, but fundamentally, what's very critical here is that quite a bit of data is reusable here. So I don't create a manual for a particular car, for a particular type of car. Actually, I end up creating for a car type with multiple data being sort of pulled from multiple places, including the content which you see here. But I'm not going to show you that, because that's fairly simple. This content is a producible content. But what I'm going to show you is the content which I'm actually going to get pulled from both my PIMs and the PLMs, and also the SQLs of the world, because car manufacturing today has about 15 to 17 databases. As we sort of did our research when we were doing this, they have that many databases to get data pulled from to write a sort of a user manual or a owner manual, as we call it. So we have done some homework with respect to that, where we've actually pulled, for example, if I want to create a manual for, in this case, I've just picked up Magnite as one of the cars. So I'm going to quickly pull that in to say that, hey, I'm going to start putting the front image here. And then I start to do some bit of basic details of the car, which is what I'm going to insert. Oops. Oh, there you go. The basic details which I'm going to start putting in, and then I start to put some features of the car as well. And then these are all this data which you see is templated data coming from a PIM PLM system or an auto or a source system which you typically. So you don't need to redo this entire all the time. And this is available. For example, if the safety say dual airbag becomes 6 airbags, for example, and it gets updated in the source system, this data, whenever I pull it next, is going to make it 6 airbags in the. So this is the power of sort of reusability which we are connecting to these data sources. And then I'm going to I'll probably quickly do maybe one more when I author something like this. I go to I save this. I go to the in the manual. I do say safety, for example. I get some data for safety with respect to seat belts, for example. I can actually insert them here. I have some seat belts. I can, you can keep naming the content and sort of pulling the data with the way accordingly, and I can go on. I mean, these all data is coming from my PIM system or data stored in some of the external data sources. It's all not created content, but actually reused content here. And I can keep building this entire piece as I go along. But for the want of time, I'll probably stop myself and not do the entire manual at this point in time. But fundamentally, when I go and publish this, and I can do a standard publish the way I want to do it, but effectively I will try and show you an outcome of what I published. Something like this would come out, and this is out of our PDF engine, which we have, what we call as native PDF. Some of native PDF, some of you would know, and this is a Magnite's owner manual which I've just published out of the content, some sort of out of thin air kind of thing, where and all this is either a PDF or you can actually put it to a site and stuff like that. So this is a quick show of what one of the use cases from a manufacturing car manufacturing kind of thing we can do. I'll quickly come to the most important use case I feel, to my views, is a big game changer, especially in the industry, given the kind of content which is getting produced in this. Is the bulletin which I just showed you in the beginning, and I'm going to do a very similar bulletin management out of guides. So I go to where and as I said, on an average, 3,000 plus bulletins get issued every year from every car manufacturing company, and the number can be give and take 10 to 15% up and down. So let me do a bulletin, and I can open a bulletin here.
Dilip, just a quick time check. We got 15 minutes, and we want to leave time for Ron, and we want to leave time for some questions.
Absolutely. This is my last bit, and I'm going to quickly go in here. In this case, I'm what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the entire topic as is. So the topic I'll tell you why I pulled this, and I've actually inserted the topic already, and all this content is pre-populated, pre-generated. Basis a query which I've written here, which is what I'm going to show. This is the most powerful part. So actually, I have already written a query where it is going to pull data from PLM starting between 2012, because typically bulletins are for a car, say, dated between 2012 and 2014 in this case, and it could be any date, and it could be a dealer location where it was sold in US because they want to issue some sort of a replacement of that particular part for those particular cars. So I actually can go and do that, and this gave me this query, and the data which I've generated is actually between that date range which I'm going to look at, and this is something which I can just go ahead and publish it, because this is a data which is one published both on the website as well as this goes as a pamphlet or a flyer to all these dealers and including the car owners as well. So I've actually gone ahead and published it, and this is typically how it looks. So what I showed you a classical, and I made a very simple look and feel from guides, but you can actually make the feel the way you want it with your company's logo and stuff like that. So I've not done that exercise, but fundamentally this is all reusable content, reused content coming from multiple sources, all in one place, and all published for us to either use in PDF or in the AEM sites or any other mechanism which you want to publish. This is a quick use case on this. With that, what I'll do is I'll have my friend Ron come over. He's going to talk about. We are working with him as one of the beta program, as part of the beta program, where he's going to talk about a very interesting use case, and he actually has been a champion with respect to in his organization, where he has probably been one of the most sort of the most dynamic person in this case, where he actually pulled together both the technology part as well as the content part, and how he actually is going to coalesce into a single story. For that, I'll quickly hand it over to Ron. Let me go to the slides, Ron, in a second. And here you go, Ron.
Well, thanks, Dilip. To get started, I'd like to tell you about Ariel Corporation. Ariel is the largest manufacturer of separable reciprocating gas compressors worldwide. Our compressors are utilized by the global energy industry to extract, process, transport, store, and distribute natural gas from the wellhead to the end user. Ariel compressors are built to last for decades, and our technical communications are vital to customer support and the Ariel product brand. Our documentation conveys how our products are manufactured, operated, maintained, and repaired. We utilize AEM and guides to author, translate, and deliver up-to-date, accurate, and easy-to-understand documentation. We were honored to be asked by Dilip to work with his team to beta test Adobe's external data source capability. It will allow us to strengthen our single source of truth capabilities by providing an enterprise service bus that sends master source data from our SQL database directly into our technical documentation in Adobe Guides. This offers benefits beyond eliminating manual cut and paste or data import tasks. I'll walk you through an example. So let's say there's a specification change on Ariel's KBE compressor model, and the maximum allowable speed is increased from 1400 RPM to 1500 RPM. The 1500 RPM data change originates in the database of our performance program. That's our software used to configure and optimize our compressor products and components to an application. Without single source of truth, that 1500 RPM data change we just made, well, that's of no consequence. Instead, the data change is manually updated through a series of engineering change requests facilitated by forms and workflow approvals. The specification data is manually authored into the product manual, and the proceeding documents are updated accordingly. This process can take several weeks to accomplish, and it requires attention to detail by each author. With single source of truth and using Adobe's external data source capabilities, the Enterprise Service Bus allows all our documentation to be updated automatically to the new specification as soon as the data is updated in our performance program. We can add update notifications and apply data governance to ensure that 1500 RPM specification is properly applied in all instances. We expect the adoption of Adobe's external data source capability to facilitate the creation of a single source of truth by creating a unified platform in AEM where everyone in Ariel can access the data from a single point. It will eliminate form-based processes to update critical data in our documentation and speed up delivery. And it ensures data quality by quickly identifying any changes in the data set. Another advantage is our language pages. Data is fed directly into the language pages, and we don't have to translate them. In summary, this was one simple example of a specifications update where we would pull data from over 60 references to update the page. In the scheme of our technical communications, we're working with vast amounts of data. Adobe's external data source capability offers the automation and acceleration needed to ensure accurate data collection within our technical documentation. Thank you for listening, and I'll send it back to Leroy. Leroy?
Great. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Marco and Dilip. Now we have a few minutes left to wrap up, but thank both of you for talking about external database connections and how it can help maintain our technical documentation with up-to-date references to external data. If you have any questions, you can feel free to still add them to the chat. At this point, we have one from Anne. The question is, how about Microsoft Word content? It doesn't go into AEM cleanly, so being able to integrate that as a source would be very helpful. Dilip, do you have anything in response to that? Word is not typically a database, but could that also use the same mechanism to pull in external data?
Yeah, I'll probably answer it with I probably I mean, there are sort of two answers to this. One, I think there's a word import utility we already have where we actually can pull data from Word and actually get to data and really run it through guides. So that's one. I'm assuming that if that's one capability of one-off migration, that's already there in the product, which I think is to be utilized. And I think we can put you to the SE team. But from Word being a source of content for a regular pull. It'll be interesting to figure that use case, because either sometimes I think Excel can probably play that part, but I think will be interesting to see if Word does that, and if we have a mechanism by which you can actually look at Word. I'll be keen to pursue that as well. But in if it is one shot exercise of really pulling data as a sort of a content migration, that's already in place in Guides.
Right, that's curious. I mean, that made me think of maybe content that's within an Excel spreadsheet as well. If you have other sorts of external data that can somehow be used to make a connection to that content, that might be very useful as well. So we'll try to follow up with you with that particular use case moving forward. We have another question here. You've shown Jira, and what if we were to use Adobe Workfront for that similar Jira use case?
Great question. In fact, we are actually in as part of our roadmap. Adobe Workfront integration is one of the top items. So rest assured that's coming your way very soon. It may not be truly like an external data source integration, but it'll be an integration the way we want it, in terms of how we're probably in the case of understanding how the integration can happen, because Workfront also has multiple modules. So we'll figure out how the integration is going to work and which ones are going to be integrated. But rest assured, whosoever has asked the question, Workfront is top of mind for us.
That was from Jeff Clausen.
Great, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for that. We have one more question from Shelley Frost. Can JAMA, J-A-M-A content be imported into Guides? I'm not familiar with JAMA. Maybe someone else on. No. Okay, we'll have to follow.
I'll probably take that as we'll take that as an action. I'll probably follow that and come back.
A JAMA database. And then we have one more question from Manuel. Do the API connectors require any web connection to Adobe, or are they operated company network internal?
We're trying to, just from an architecture perspective, we're trying to figure out a way where we can actually help first register the databases you're going to be looking at, and then use those connectors to pull the data. So one is the registration part, which obviously I didn't show you here because it didn't make sense to this audience and to the meeting. But fundamentally, that's going to be the first setup kind of a thing, which I think is going to happen first, and then the pull part, which is going to come through. So your question will probably get addressed in the first part, in terms of how we want to get access to any of the databases we want to go to. So how do we register that is something which we will probably use some of the goodness of AEM and actually do that exercise there.
Okay, great.
Good question. Yeah.
And that being said, if there's any more questions, we still have a few minutes. Please feel free to add to the chat. But also, I want to mention that we've talked about a few specific use cases within this call. But what we're really hoping is to gather more personal use cases from everyone who's attending individually, and maybe you can help us make this product more applicable to a number of different contexts, which is the main goal. So we're happy to continue the discussion with any of you, and if you want to talk about a particular use case that you have in mind, we would be happy to have that discussion. One more question I have for Marco, and we've talked about this a little bit. You're mentioning pulling in content directly from Jira, and from my experience with Jira, especially if you have engineers or a lot of different people adding to that content, what happens if some of the content within Jira is not necessarily, the best for customer-facing documentation? How would you handle those type of situations?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, we'll establish with that product team, that release notes comments field is exclusively for docs use. Make sure no engineers or QA experts touch it. The rest of the Jira ticket is fair game for those folks, obviously, with the defect descriptions and any other information that belongs in Jira. But we'll basically make it very clear with the product team that release notes comments field is used to leverage text that goes out in the public stuff. So that's for the tech writer to work in exclusively, and any other comments comments about that text can be added via the Jira comments below. But of course, there will always be, once we do that poll, the writer will always do a check to make sure everything follows proper standards and everything looks exactly as it looks, and there's no text snuck in there by engineering in our release notes comments field.
That's great.
Yeah.
So then that also adds to the quality of your Jira tickets, because you have, so people pay more attention to the content within there that will play a purpose both for your Jira audience and your technical documentation audience as well. That's great. Thank you for that answer. And then the other thing to keep in mind within any external database connection, I always work with tech writers and I say, hey, if you're going to be reusing content, you want to make sure who's ever editing that source knows that, hey, when you make this change, it's going to be updated in maybe, 50 to 100 different manuals. So, you want to make sure on the database side that the people who may be populating that content or updating that content is aware that this content is directly being reused in customer-facing documentation. So just something else to think about. Okay, so I'm just checking to see if we have any more questions from Jeff Clausen. Our homegrown REST RESTful API JSON payloads, which is our PIM, will be of interest to us. It's not an off-the-shelf package PIM product.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we are working with one of the customers who has exactly what you just stated, Jeff. So he has an API tool which throws out the JSON output of that, and then we are pulling that and probably going to catch that and get that entire thing integrated. So join the party.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for attending this session. We're out of time now, but if you have any additional questions, please send them to techcom@adobe.com, and we'll be sure to answer any more questions or comments that you have.
Well, thank you, Leroy and Dilip, for sharing your time with us today. And to our guest speakers, Ron and Marco, we certainly appreciate your time and use cases. And to all of you in the audience today, we appreciate your participation, your questions, your interest, and we thank you for your thoughtful time and attention. This does conclude today's session, and on behalf of Adobe, we wish you a great rest of your day.